Hey guys, it's Jessie here. I'm back with another video, and today's video is going to be a little bit controversial. It's the controversial parenting tag. I wasn't tagged by anyone to do this, but I've seen it kind of making the rounds on YouTube for a while now, and as a parent myself, I thought that I was allowed to do it. So I do have two boys. They are 14 and 7. I feel like 7. No, he's not 7 anymore, guys. They're 14 and 9. I don't know why I said 7. Growing up way too fast, I guess. But I think a lot of the questions on here are more geared towards like younger children. You know, like a lot of things are like breast milk versus formula, that sort of thing. And I'm way past that stage with my kids, but I think my opinion still matters. So I'm going to go ahead and do this tag. I hope that I don't offend anyone. If you watch this video and you are offended, I do apologize. I don't intend to offend anyone, but there are some controversial things here, and I know that people have very strong opinions, so feel free to debate if you would like, but keep it, you know, respectful. Don't argue in the comments or anything. I know that my subscribers are very sweet and open-minded, and I don't worry about it too much, but I feel like with this sort of thing, you sort of have to put the disclaimer out there. Like, I don't mean to offend. Let's just be nice, guys, okay? Okay, so I'm going to leave all the questions in the description box below if you guys want to follow along and do this yourself. And we're just going to get into it. So the first, it says, what are your stances on ... And the first one is pro-life or pro-choice. They're getting right in there with the nitty-gritty. I am pro-choice. 100%. I feel like it is a woman's right to choose. I think that for me, I don't know that I could ever have an abortion. I don't know that I could, but I think that every woman is different and it's her right to choose. I know that there are a lot of cases where you maybe don't want to proceed with a pregnancy, whether you were raped or there's illness, or you know, there's lots of reasons. So definitely pro-choice. I don't think that it's my right to tell anyone what to do with their lives. Number 2 is baby wearing. I think I had my children sort of before the baby wearing craze. I mean, I know that people have worn babies for centuries, but it wasn't a big thing when I had my kids. So it was not something that was marketed towards women very much. So I never did it. However, I think it's awesome. Who would not want to be able to carry their baby and have their hands free? I mean, that's just simple logic. Amazing. If I had another child now, I would absolutely consider baby wearing. I think that it just makes good sense. Why not? I don't see why that's really controversial, to be honest. If you guys can explain to me why that would be controversial in the comments, I'd appreciate it, because I really don't get what the controversy is there. Number 3 is circumcision. This is something that I'm going to opt out of talking about. I have 2 boys. They are 14 and 9, like I said, and if I tell you my opinion on circumcision, then I feel like that's just a little too much information about my children. You know, they're of an age where they probably don't want everybody to know their business in terms of that. If they were 1 and 2, I might be more open to discussing circumcision, but it's just one of those things like, I'm not gonna tell, you know? So I'm gonna opt out of that one. Maybe that's like breaking rules. I think the whole idea is to talk about controversial things here, but for my children's privacy, I'm gonna just opt out of that question, and I hope you guys understand. Number 4, adoption. I think that adoption is great. I have friends who have adopted children, who wanted children desperately and went through, you know, all of the medical intervention to try to make it happen, and when it didn't happen for them, they went with adoption, and they have, you know, a great life with their child now. So I think that adoption is a great option for anyone out there who wants to have children but can't, or for anyone that chooses to just give a loving home to a child. I think it's a great option for a woman who maybe doesn't want to go for abortion but doesn't want to raise a baby. I don't see a downside with adoption. I wish that the adoption process was maybe a little bit easier sometimes. I mean, I understand that there are rules for a reason, but I know that there are lots and lots of women and men out there who really would desperately love to have children, and there are a lot of children out there who would really desperately love to have parents. So I'm all for adoption. Number 5 is baby piercing. I am of the opinion that a child, a person, should be able to choose for themselves what they want to do with their lives. So I personally would not make the decision to pierce a baby. I feel like that is something that they should be able to decide themselves when they're older, whether or not they want piercings. So for me, I'm not against it. I think that babies with earrings are super cute, and I think that if that's what you want for your child, then you know, you do you. But I personally would not pierce my baby. I had boys, so it made the decision really easy. You know, girls, there's more pressure to do the ear piercing thing. But it's just not something that I personally would do. But more power to you if you do. Number 6 is breast milk versus formula. And I feel like this is probably the most controversial one on the list, because I know that people get super passionate about their opinion on breast versus formula. I formula fed both my children. When Robert was born, he's my oldest, I had just turned 18 when he was born, and I was adamant that I was not going to breastfeed. It was not for me. I was young. You know, whatever. It was my choice. I decided against it. He was formula fed. My husband helped with feedings, and it was fine. When Austin came along, I was a few years older, and I considered breastfeeding. With his health issues and everything that kind of progressed after that, my son has Hirschsprung's disease. He had surgery at 4 days old, and it's been like a long journey with him. It just, formula feeding was better in our circumstances, in our situation. I think that, you know, that's a personal decision. I think both of my children are very smart and very sweet, and maybe breast milk would have been better for them. I'll never know, because they were formula fed, but I don't think that any woman should be shamed whatsoever for her decision whether they choose to breastfeed or formula feed. I'm a very open-minded person. So, you know, breast is best, whatever. Do what you can. Feed your baby. Not every woman can breastfeed. Not every circumstance makes it possible to do that. So I don't think we should ever shame a woman regardless of her decision, as long as she's feeding her baby. Sorry, you guys, I'm really sick. I've had the summer cold for days, and it's killing me. Number 7 is cry it out method versus other. We did the cry it out method with my kids, sort of a less extreme version. I know there are some versions where you let them cry and cry and cry and cry. We really wanted our children to know how to self-soothe, so, you know, we weren't the type to rock our kids to sleep. They've always been really good sleepers, both of them, so that made it kind of easy. But, you know, we would let them cry for 10 minutes, and then we would go in there and kind of pat them, soothe them a little bit, and then we'd leave the room and let them cry for another 10 minutes, and it was very easy for us. It was very quick. It wasn't the type of situation where they were screaming for hours at a time and we were pulling our hair out. So maybe we would have chosen otherwise if that were the case, but the cry it out method worked fine for us. You know, you do what you gotta do. That's kind of my theory about parenting in general. Like, you do what you can to survive it, because it is a struggle, it is complicated, it's difficult, and as long as you have the best interest of your child in your heart, I don't think there's really a wrong way to parent. I mean, obviously there are people out there that make mistakes, but ultimately, if you're taking care of your child and you're putting their best interest at heart, I don't see how you could really get it wrong. Number 8 is spanking. I have spanked my children on occasions. It's what my parents did for me. It's what my husband's parents did for him. We don't get extreme about it, obviously. We also have implemented other forms of punishment, but we don't rule out spanking. It's an option. You know, again, you do what you got to do to keep your kids alive. There are certain circumstances where a good swat on the butt, in my opinion, is the best way to reinforce the lesson that you're trying to teach your child, and I'm not opposed to it. Number 9, co-sleeping. That was never something that we really did. There were rare occasions where the child was sick or we were exhausted where we brought the baby to bed with us, but it was not something we did consistently, and it was not something that I personally would want to do like long term with my child. Obviously my children are well beyond the age of co-sleeping anyway, but I feel like, one, there's always that risk that you're going to roll over the baby. That's not my biggest concern, though. I feel like when you have a baby, the relationship that you have with your significant other, there's so much stress that gets put there, and there's so much chaos that it's so easy to kind of drift apart from your partner. And I think that having that safe place, having that bed where the two of you lie down together every day is sort of sacred. I mean, that's the wrong word, but I wouldn't want to bring a baby into that and put a bigger divide between my husband and myself. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, that's where we're intimate. That's where we lay up at night and talk and discuss our future, and that's a place in the house that's just for my husband and me, and I wouldn't want to put a baby between us. Do you know what I'm saying? So co-sleeping is not something for us. I don't knock anyone who does it. I think that sleep is so important, especially when you have a newborn, and if putting your baby in your bed is what helps you sleep at night, then by all means do it. But for me, it was just not something that I was into. Number 10 is home versus public versus private versus charter schooling. My children are both in public schools. I went to a public school. My husband went to public school. I think that it was just kind of a no-brainer for us. We never really considered private school. We did a little bit, but private schools can be very expensive, and I feel like you can get a decent education in public schools just as well as you can anywhere. I never considered homeschooling because I don't think that I, A, have the patience for homeschooling, but B, I just don't think I'm smart enough to be able to instill the knowledge in my children that they need to get through their lives. Like, I can teach them until I'm blue in the face about, you know, street smarts and life experience and whatnot, but when it comes to the book learning, I don't think that I could properly portray that, and I also don't think that they would absorb as much if it was coming from me. You know, they always listen better to someone else. I don't know if that's a phenomenon that every mom experiences, but like, have you ever sent your child away with a babysitter and they come back and the babysitter tells you what perfect angels your children were and how they were no trouble, and you're kind of sitting there scratching your head like, why can't they do that for me? I feel like kids just listen better to other authority figures, and I feel like they will absorb more going to school versus a homeschooling situation. And again, I don't have anything against homeschooling. I think that it's fantastic if you can sit down and teach your child every day and have that dynamic. I'm very jealous of your ability to do that, but I just know that it would not work for our family. So we're public school all the way. Number 11 is vaccinations, and this is probably another one that's like top 10, very, very controversial. I am all for vaccinations. I can't understand why you would choose in this day and age not to vaccinate your child. I feel like there are so many things and dangers out there in life, and vaccinations are just... See, I feel like I'm going to offend somebody if I continue this, but I guess that's the point of this tag. I feel like it's irresponsible not to vaccinate your children. That being said, I know that there are people that do like a delayed vaccination schedule, and I understand that. But for me, vaccinations are so important. It's a safety issue in my mind, and absolutely my children have been and will be vaccinated against everything that they offer a vaccine for. Number 12 is medicating children. I had a very different opinion on this topic when my children were younger versus now. And most specifically, the situation that I'm referring to is ADHD medication. I was one of those parents back in the day shaking their head saying, I cannot believe anyone would choose to medicate their child for this. You know, they're just being kids. Why can't you just figure out a way to take care of your kid without pumping them full of pills? That's ridiculous. And then Robbie got a little bit older, and he started exhibiting these signs and symptoms of ADHD, and it was a very, very long time before I did it. We explored a lot of different options and variables, but ultimately I did decide to medicate him for the ADHD, and I kind of look back at my former self and roll my eyes a little bit at my ignorance about the whole situation. I don't think that you should necessarily medicate your child for every single thing, but absolutely talk to your doctor, and if your doctor is telling you that a medication is going to help your child, forget about the friggin' stigma and forget about the judgmental Judies out there and do what's best for your child. That's ultimately what I did. I'm not going to go into the whole scenario, the whole situation, but I look at it like this, okay? If a doctor is telling me that my child has diabetes and this medication is going to help them live their lives, I would give it to my child in a heartbeat. And I don't see why any sort of like mental illness shouldn't be the same. And that was actually, my husband and I got into a really big debate about this when we first started discussing medication for Robbie, because he was even more adamant than me that he was not going to medicate his child. And I finally had to sit down after we looked up all our options and discussed it with the doctor, and we discussed it with the school, and we discussed it with Robbie. I said, our youngest son, Austin, like I said, has Hirschsprung's disease. I said to him, I said, if the doctor gave you a pill tomorrow that said this would cure Austin's Hirschsprung's disease, you would give it to him in a heartbeat. Why isn't the ADHD the same? So medication for us helps both of our children. We have medicated both of our children for various things over the years, and I'm all for it. I have definitely changed my mind over the years. I was adamant against medicating my child before, but I think the more that you learn and the more experience you have, you know, you can kind of change your mind. I think the best person to decide what is best for your child is yourself, and you can't really let other people's opinions or thoughts on things sway how you take care of your child. You just do the best you can with the information you're given, and that's kind of how we get through our lives. Number 13 is cloth versus disposable diapers. This is another one that I feel like I have a really, really good opinion on, because Austin, with his Hirschsprung's disease, with the treatment that we sought for his Hirschsprung's disease, he ended up incontinent. So he could not control his bowel movements. And so we went through a lot more diapers than an average family for a lot longer. When he was an infant just out of surgery on his colon, we were going through something like 18 to 20 diapers a day. And as he got older, and he couldn't control his bowels. Still at 4 and 5 and 6, we continued to use diapers. And so in our situation, it was extreme. It's not the norm necessarily, but I cannot imagine, I cannot even fathom the idea of cloth diapering with as many diapers as we went through. I think that cloth diapering is awesome for the environment. I think it's great for a child. In our circumstances, it never would have worked for us. I would have never stopped doing laundry. So we definitely did disposable diapers and would again. And number 14 is the very last question in the tag, and it is store-bought baby food versus homemade. I did a combination of both with my children. We did a lot of store-bought baby food, but we also did a lot of kind of the homemade, make-your-own stuff. I think that is more a circumstance of what you can afford and what is important for you in terms of nutrition for your child. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. You may disagree with me, but I think, again, I said it before when we were talking about breast milk versus formula. I think the most important thing is just that you feed your baby. Whatever you can get your kid to eat, keeping in mind, obviously, nutrition, you do what you can. I would have loved to be one of those moms who made absolutely everything that went into my child's belly, but I didn't have the time or the energy, and still to this day, like, sometimes you just gotta take the easy way. Sometimes you gotta pull the frozen pizza out of the freezer and throw it in the oven, and that's kind of how I felt when my children were younger too. You just do the best you can. So that's it for the controversial parenting tag. I hope I didn't offend anyone. If you guys have any comments or questions or anything about anything that was discussed in this video, or if you have an opinion you'd like to share, feel free in the comments below. Let's just be respectful of one another. Like I said, it's controversial. There could be a lot of, you know, a lot of room for flaming and kind of getting mean, so let's not do that. But hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, because I'd love to have you back, and we'll talk to you again soon.